Hi, Deborah. How are you?
Hi, pretty good. I'm already recording, so I think we can just dive in if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, what is your name, age, and how many books have you published?
I'm Julian Font. I am 27 years old and I have published three books so far.
Okay, got it. So, what is your best-selling book?
My best-selling book is Right My Wrongs. It's a rock star romance about two songwriters who fall in love through the songs they write together, and it's the second book that I published.
Okay. So your first book wasn't best-selling.
It was not. No, I actually learned a lot from that book. It was before I joined Book Talk and Bookstagram. It was before I really knew the community. So that book was just a culmination of my upbringing, and I had no idea what the readers were even looking for. So I was able to gauge the response from that first book and then channel that feedback into the second book, which I believe is what made it a bestseller for the time that it was.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what type of genre do you typically write? Romance or?
So the last three have actually been a mix. The first was a coming of age, the second was a romance, and then the third was a thriller. And I think a big part of my mixing it up was because I wanted to live all these different experiences, right? Whether it was the journey from teenagehood into adulthood, whether it's romance, and then whether it's the dark side of cinema and TV, which was the thriller. But I am gravitating towards romance on this fourth book, and it's something I kind of missed. I missed that connection between characters that's just got so many layers to it, as you could probably tell. Like, when you read romance, there's something different about the connection you have with the characters as opposed to other books. So I think romance is going to be it, at least for the next book, and then we'll see after that.
Okay, yeah. So now for the more like deeper questions. So how long have you been like writing and publishing and like what has your journey with that look like since childhood?
Absolutely. I have been writing since I was a little kid. I used to have these journals. I was 10 years old. I was like fourth or fifth grade. And I used to not like the ending of certain movies or TV shows or other books. And I would rewrite the endings myself. So it was sort of like this version of fan fiction. And I'd have these little journals that had these composition books at the time. And my teachers, shouts out Mrs. Chung in fifth grade, she would have me stick around after class and read them to the other teachers. So she was one of the teachers that saw the good in my writing. And I sort of lost sight of that in middle school and high school, with the pressures of fitting in.
Yeah.
And, I got really into soccer at the time, and I knew that I was going to be playing college soccer. So writing sort of took this back seat in my life. It wasn't until 2020 that I fell in love with it. I was going through my closet, just doing some cleaning at the time because COVID, we had extra time and everything
Yeah.
was closed. And I came across those same old journals and I started reading through and I thought I had something going here, right? When I was a kid, this is what I wanted to be before the world started telling me what I needed to be. I would sing at a bonfire and everyone said you should be a singer. I'd run fast on the soccer field. Everyone said you should be a soccer player. But before anyone said you should be a writer, I was already writing and fell in love with it all over again in 2020. Everything was closed at the time, at least here in Southern California, towards LA area. And I sat down, started writing chapter one of my first book night after night, and I just did not stop. And now I'm on book three. I mean, they are all standalones, but I just never stopped. I fell in love with it. And Book Talk has been good to me. Just such a welcoming and amazing community of some brilliant readers that just go so deep, and Bookstagram as well, BookTube, all these different facets of TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And I think that it just is this revamp of love for literature and writing that I've been able to just dive right back into. So I'd say that's where I'm at now, going into book four. All three have been independently published, and luckily, I've had the blessing of being able to essentially run as my own brand, like an independent author, and have that creative freedom
Yeah.
with the books that I'm writing.
Yeah. So you said that you kind of threw writing in the closet, if you will, like for a few years. So
Mhm.
did you go to college or like start a career like separate from writing?
Yeah, so I went to college to study marketing. So it's funny. I knew that I didn't know where exactly I wanted to go as far as an industry goes. And I went on a full ride scholarship for soccer. So writing wasn't even on the table. And I played soccer all 4 years. and I worked a corporate job. I wasn't that happy, at least in that working environment. The company was brilliant. The people I worked for were incredible, but I felt like I was in this box and I
Yeah.
needed to just get out and experience other things. And writing became that outlet in 2020 that just allowed me to just break out of these silos and the singular way of thinking and tap into that area of my life. So yeah, I studied marketing. Does it help on my day to day? Not necessarily. I think I learned more just from analyzing trends on social media and from listening to other influencers online. Talking to readers, I think, is the most applicable form of education for me.
Mhm.
But I think that if I did go back and I studied English, or I did go back and I studied a form of literature, maybe I could benefit from it, but I can't speak to that because I studied marketing.
Yeah. So do you do this full time, like building your brand and writing?
Yeah,
To
it's a full-time job.
Oh, that's so
Luckily,
cool.
thanks. Yeah. So I have a pretty hot take on this. If so I have investments. Don't get me wrong. It's not time consuming, but I have investments in real estate, and then I also have investments in stocks. Now, like I said, this is a hot take, but if the money comes from outside of literature, let's say. So I'm an author, but if my money is coming from another source, then I actually have more creative freedom. I think that a lot of authors, when they get attached to writing being their only form of income, they get really dependent on what people think, the reader's responses,
Mhm.
what their publisher says, because if the publisher drops them or their agent drops them, that's their only source of income. So they don't have that freedom. So I do write full time. All my attention, all my energy, and all my time goes into my writing. However, I will do the best I can to make sure that my income comes from different areas so that I'll forever be able to be 100% entirely myself in my writing, have that voice and not be reliant on another source fueling my livelihood, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it does. So, how many hours a week do you dedicate like just to your writing?
I treat it like a 9 to 5. So I would say 40 hours a week. I have a very strict writing routine, and I break it down into content creation is also a part of it.
Mhm.
So but writing, I'd say I write 6 to 8 hours a day, and then that's not including the the content creation side of it, the world building, discussions I have with other authors and readers. I like to kind of put that all under one umbrella. It's like I feel like I'm always working, even when I'm reading or just relaxing. There's always a note to take.
Yeah.
I'm you delved into writing and you also partake. So anything you see, it's a conversation with someone. You're at a coffee shop. You're watching a movie, reading a book. Anything can be implemented into your characters or your
Yeah.
settings of the plot. So 40 hours, I'd say, of technical and creative writing. But on top of that, I'm just always taking notes and always contributing to the worlds that I'm trying to build.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So what does the process look like for your writing? Like you said you have a very strict routine. So like how do you structure it and do all that?
Do you want me to start from the beginning of like a book concept? And
Yeah,
then,
sure. Yeah.
great. So it's a great question too, because I know you probably get a wide range of answers. So just, I can only speak on behalf of the way I do it.
Yeah.
I start off with just a one-liner, an idea, and it's the entire book in one sentence. Then I take that sentence and I turn it into a paragraph. Take that paragraph, I turn it into a full page summary. Once I have that full page summary of the book, general idea from beginning to end, maybe it's just featuring the main characters. I take that, and that's my plot, and then I create a slideshow. And the slideshow is basically called like characters. So I have my book title, and then I have characters. Each slide is essentially a mood board. So it has the main characters, secondary characters, the antagonist, villains, whatever will you, and it has what they look like, how they're related to each other. It's just strictly about the characters. And then I also have settings in that as well. So where are the characters from? What do they do on the day to day? Does this one like this one? Is this one in love with that one? What are the relationships like? Now I have my full page summary or plot. I have all my characters. I turn that full page summary into a bullet point checklist. So it'll have what happens in each chapter as bullets, and I implement the characters into that outline. So this character's growth is happening here, and then it falls as this other character grows. These two fall in love, they break up, whatever it is, it's all in a bullet point outline. And I have it from beginning to end. And I found that that's the most effective form for me, is plotting the entire book. And then after that, I just start writing to each bullet basically.
Mhm.
And from beginning to end, I just crank through the book. I have my first draft, which I'm never really happy with through and throughout. And I'm sure that's a whole nother side conversation we'll have. But the first draft, as you may know, it gets so frustrating. They say
Yeah,
real writing happens in the revisions,
yeah,
but I finished that first draft, and then I find that the longest part of my journey from beginning to end, just speaking on behalf of creating a book or writing a book, most of it's in the revisions because I can revise forever. That's when perfectionism becomes your enemy, because you get to draft 7 or 8, and then it's like, I need to get this thing out there.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just going to be stuck in my Google Docs. But I revise, and then I edit, proofread, and then comes formatting and branding. I do all my book covers and spreads myself, and then I full-fledged do all of the publishing and everything myself. So I'd say that's beginning to end what it looks like. Despite the other details like where I write, like coffee shops, depending on where I have vacations, change of scenery for inspiration. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So you said you do all the publishing stuff yourself. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so I and I'm sure there are other sources that do this more effectively or just as effective, but I use KDP through Amazon.
Mhm.
What Amazon does is Amazon gives you access to their market. So the only reason I publish through Amazon exclusively is because they have their own algorithm, and every book sale I get on Amazon, it's pushing me to other readers that are in that market, as opposed to me getting all of the copies sent to my house and then just sending them out per sale or order that I get online.
Okay.
So I have my Google Doc, beginning to end, my manuscript completed, let's say. I use Adobe InDesign, and I copy that manuscript from Google Docs, or that single Google Doc, copy the manuscript into InDesign, and I go through, because I don't trust anyone else with it, not yet. And I format every single page. And I do my read throughs and everything on InDesign. I have my whole spread there. Once that's completed, I match it up with my with the proper measurements that KDP will provide you, and then I upload the spread. It has the cover, the spine, and then the back of the book with the blurb,
Mhm.
and package it up, and then upload it, and then it's good to go. I get my proofs. Sometimes I get proofs that it takes me months to format, because it takes about 4 days for them to send you that proof copy where you're looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, the margins are too tight,
Yeah.
or the spacing's off on the cover. So that's when I have to hold my breath. That's why I'm really reluctant on setting release dates, because I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm going to get the perfect copy by the time that release date comes. Big
Yeah.
publishers, I'm sure they kill it, and they're able to do a release date, and they do everything in house maybe, or they have close contact with the printers. But that's just the way I do it. I run it all through KDP, and KDP's been good to me so far. So until I get some sort of offer that I'd be willing to accept, I think I've got a good thing going right now.
Okay. Yeah. So you do all of this yourself, from like the story to the formatting, like you don't outsource anything?
No, yeah, I don't outsource anything. I think until I meet someone that I trust in a specific facet of the industry, for example, if I meet an editor and I trust that editor with everything, I trust them with this work, because as you know, it takes a long time to write a book.
Yeah.
So I can't just find someone online and send them the manuscript, and then God forbid they take it, or they take elements of it, or I have to trust them with my baby, which is what that book is for the year that I write it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I write it myself. I do my own revisions. The one time I outsource is when I do a focus group. So I send it out to my close readers, or anyone who expresses interest, whether they are avid readers or relatively new readers.
Mhm.
And that's when I get their notes. But everything else is all me, from the beginning of the conceptualization of the writing to publish.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so are you looking into more like the traditional publishing, like in the future? Like what are your goals regarding writing in the future?
That's a great question. when I started this journey and I really try to stay on this goal, my goal is literally just to write the book I'm focusing on. So, people ask me like, is there a number of book sales you want to hit? Is there an amount of money you want to reach? Is there a dream publisher you want to be published by? And I always tell them I can't even think that far ahead. I'm only like right now, my life is book 4. Like I'm only focused on this new romance I'm working on. And so I can't think that far ahead. However, I am a little skeptical when it comes to publishers because I've heard stories about authors losing their creative freedom
Yeah.
when they get signed to these big publishers because there are trends. And what I'm afraid of is a publisher coming to me with a potential deal, which has happened before, and I'll review the deal or I'll review the offer. And I remember the first offer I ever got, they wanted me to change the trope. And I thought, oh man, like this is the first book I'm putting out. You want me to change the trope? I can't sell out that quickly, right? Because I had this in mind since the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that creative freedom. So I'm a little weary of big publishers. I think until a publisher comes to me with trust in the fact that I know what I'm doing as far as my writing goes. I know the tone I want. I know the way I want my story to be executed and what I want it to look like, even up to film adaptations of it. I have all of that scoped out, written out, ready to go. Until I can trust them with my vision, I probably wouldn't lean toward a publisher. I'll probably stick to independent until then. Because the internet also gives you so many tools to keep
Yeah.
it in-house. You're able to, like I am, you're able to write a book from the beginning, publish it at the end of the process, sell it, and just you can blow up from your bedroom.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have that creative freedom. TikTok, it's all incredible what you're able to do nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense why you're kind of like wary of the traditional publishing route, but because I feel like we hear a lot about like the traditional route, but it has its drawbacks. Like it's
Mhm.
not, a one size fits all. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to a young writer who's looking to write a book of their own?
Oh, it's a great question. It's also something
Mhm.
that I would have wished someone told me at the beginning, but something I learned naturally. My one piece of advice would be to stick to the moral of your story. So everyone, whether they realize it or not, everyone has a moral of the story. And the moral of the story is that lesson or that it's a lesson or what you want your reader to learn. And what I strive for is to have my readers grow as they read my book. So I want them to be I want them to be left better than they were before they started reading my book. And in order to do that, I need to make sure that, okay, if my moral of the story is to introduce this concept of submitting yourself to the unknown and embracing life for what it is and just letting go of trying to control everything in life. If that's my moral of the story, I want to be intact with that from the beginning to the end because that's what fuels me to finish the book. It's
Uh-huh.
it's knowing like it's understanding that my reader can finish my book and say, okay, I'm going to embrace life for what it is and let go of all these things that I've been trying to control. It's that moral at the end that just drives me to finish the book. I think it's the bigger picture.
Uh-huh. So would you say that the moral is kind of like your inspiration?
Absolutely. I think the moral is the inspiration because for me, like I said, there's no number of books that I care to sell. There's no dollar sign. There's no amount of copies that would make me happy. I think what makes me the happiest is when someone responds to my story, responds to my book by saying, your book inspired me to do XYZ. Your book changed my life in this way. If one person will say that, I know I did my job. I know that it's worth it in the end.
Mhm. That's so well said. Yeah. So how can other young writers find like similar inspiration and like find certain morals and lessons to write about?
I think that comes from looking within and also being passionately moved by something that's happening in real life. And I think we can all attest to this. I think, sure, we read fiction and sure, we write fiction, but I mean, creativity is a blend of memories and the unique combination of memories. We don't create things from nothing. So the more that we're able to experience, I think the more that we're able to pull inspiration from those experiences. And that's what makes us creative. So I think to bring it full circle, I think something's got to move you within, or you need to have a family member that is so passionately moved by some sort of facet of their life. And I think that that will channel true inspiration in your writing. So my first book was about this corrupted dark side of nightlife. And what inspired that was I was going through a difficult time in my late teens and my early 20s. And I tried to bury that hard time under partying and going out in LA and Hollywood and just diving into this party scene. And I was exposed to a lot of dark parts of this glamorous lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
that inspired me to say, okay, I'm going to write something that encourages readers to always be aware of their surroundings when they go out and party, or always be aware of the fact that there are bad ways to cope with trauma, and there are unfruitful, dangerous ways to cope with trauma that look pretty, like substance abuse. It can look glamorous when you're in a nightclub and you're getting VIP bottles and everything, but there's this underlining lesson to be learned. Like, that's not the best way to cope with trauma.
Yeah.
Even though partying and stuff looks fun, it's not always the right way to do it. So that inspired the first book. The second book was having a creative outlet that's through music. And I had these two characters that were struggling with different parts of their lives, and they needed to funnel those hardships into their music. And I wanted my readers to understand that whether it's writing music or writing books or anything that's creative, chase that passion over a paycheck. The third book, the inspiration was, you have media, you have social media, and there are great things that come from both, but there are also these underlining dark messages and dark forms of media that can really make you devalue your own life. So I wanted my readers to be aware of that. That was the inspiration behind that. So I think all of those different forms of inspiration just fueled me because I felt like I was personally struggling with them. And so my way of working through them was putting that into my writing.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so I think we can end on that note.